Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling, I've got to get my notes up here. Corporate elites, the billionaire class, want to create gridlock in DC, stymie government's mission. So, this is a response to, or this was triggered by both basically some analysis by the Young Turks about some reporting by The Hill about lobbying firms recording a record year in 2021, and what I'm and so basically, the 2021, some major lobbying firms saw an increase of about 25 to 30% in their revenues. And they attribute a number of things to this increase, but one of the focuses of lobbying has been the Biden administration and also the Congress in trying to pass this Build Back Better agenda. And I think the reason why I'm highlighting this particular story is that it's something that's not reported a lot in mainstream media. I mean, The Hill is a blog on the internet, and also they have some streaming channels, some of which I watch occasionally. They are an organization that tends toward the right, but they also have some good reporting in them, or actually they seem to do lots of free PR for right-wingers, but at the same time there's some substantive information, and they including having Ryan Grimm on Rising now. He's one of the hosts of Rising, and he's one of the best political reporters currently in the United States. So anyway, the reason why this is caught my eye, and I think is a critical issue and fits in with what I've been talking about in other videos here on Politics 2100, is that I'm trying to describe in detail what the dynamics of politics are in the United States, and also to try to understand the very puzzling behavior of the Democratic Party, as well as the behavior of other parties and media figures and so forth and so on, and to create a tapestry or a map of U.S. politics. And I think one of the points I try to make, and again, it's something of a hypothesis, but it's about, in a way, the vision of where we need to go. And at the same time, this is a negative story about it. In other words, this is a story about a blockage to where we need to go as a society. So I think this is a struggle over the use of the instrument of government, and that's where I think progressives do not conceptualize clearly enough in their thinking that they need to struggle and wrest the instrument of government away from corporate control. And at least in the terms that I'm talking about, they talk about some of the policy goals they want. They talk about how there's a list of policies: Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, student loan forgiveness, postal banking even. So but what is the commonality in many of these? And also, what is the vision that progressives have for what they want to do? And we see with the amount of lobbying that is being done in this effort by the Democrats to, in a very minor way, turn government into a little bit more of a support for ordinary people. The pandemic has exposed the lack of support that ordinary people have, and it continues to do so. And it's not as though a light bulb has gone off among the Democratic establishment. But in campaigning for the presidency, Joe Biden created this Build Back Better, or he and his advisors created this Build Back Better vision, and they realized that because of reconciliation and the filibuster and so forth and so on, and they needed to make it one big package, and they needed to try to get it through as one big package, but then they didn't. So, there was all kinds of stumbling and hesitancy about realizing this vision. So the vision is unclear, it's murky, and in a way it comes from the Rooseveltian legacy that is also denied and fought against by the Democratic Party. That essentially it's the New Deal legacy that installed the Democratic Party as the dominant party in the middle of the 20th century for the most part, especially in the legislatures and in the federal legislatures, and also it at the same time the Democratic Party in the 80s and the 90s until today has been trying to disown that legacy, and also I'm coming at this in part through the lens of modern monetary theory, that the importance of government spending and how government has this capacity or this potential to do a lot more for people, for ordinary people, if it is the political will is there and the politics dictate to government that it should orient essentially the economy in a way that is good for ordinary people. And the thing is that the ruling elites, the corporate elite, the corporate oligarchy that has our politics wrapped up pretty well via all the forms of legal corruption, even some illegal corruption that goes on, but that is sanctioned in our system, and it contains the politics. So this instrument of government is stymied. Okay, and this is the spending on lobbying by corporations, especially as this Build Back Better agenda was being thought about, is an attempt to steer and stymie, as I've said in the title, this potential of government to create a larger public sector, or at least a budget that serves certain public good projects more, okay, than currently exists, so that cuts out some of the middlemen, the crony capitalist middlemen that currently have government wrapped up. Especially, I mean, the military budget is this pure crony capitalism in a way where you have these very few contractors who've essentially have a great security in their continued growth of their budgets because of their hold over politicians and our culture, among other things, this cult of the deadly phallus that I talk about, which puts politicians in the situation where they don't want to appear "quote unquote" weak by cutting military spending, and they want to project this bravado and this machismo, and also women, the same thing for women politicians as well. Or that's why I use the terminology I do, that anyone can parade around with this deadly phallus and claim that they're tough and they're strong, and that they cannot be hurt, that they create an aura of invincibility around themselves or around the nation by worshiping in this particular cult. So, and which leads to increased military spending and also some ill-advised military adventures. But anyway, but this potential of government to be serve the people, if our politics, if we recognize, and if particularly the Democratic Party or the left of the Democratic Party, though theoretically it could also be some other party, but right now the concentration of progressive politicians and leaders are in the leftward part of the Democratic Party, and I mean not the actual left, which is quite small, and it's maybe 10 people in both Congress and the Senate, the squad plus Bernie Sanders plus maybe a few other people who see this potential and also are not beholden to these corporate interests. So, but the need to steer, so the increased lobbying has something to do with the danger of the potential of the Democratic Party, even though these Democrats are also in a way, the game that they're playing is that they say, well, we could do a New Deal thing, but pay us off with lobbying dollars, because some of the money goes to campaign coffers, among other things. Basically they can play this game a little bit of saying, well, we could do these good things for the American people, or you could sort of buy us off, and so we have a party, in this case that sort of sits the center of the political spectrum of Washington, which is really quite far to the right, but there's still glimmerings of this potential to use government for popular benefit, and also to cut out some of the middle people, some of the corporations that are, or also another thing is that there's a recognition by politically savvy right-wing people or corporate advisors that to actually transition off fossil fuels and to do a Green New Deal in the scale that's required would require really public ownership of, or at least public financing, and therefore a more direct route of, so in other words, corporations might act as direct government contractors rather than somehow through a public-private partnership or some other way steer the process. Okay, so in other words, that the plan would be a public plan to democratically decide, it's saying we're going to get off fossil fuels, we're going to shut down the fossil fuel industry. So the fossil fuel industry is also seeing or realizing that even though the Democrats and the Democratic Party leadership is nowhere near shutting them down, that they need to preemptively shut down the Democrats and tie them up in knots. And either through carrots and sticks, among other things, and the Democrats or the Democratic leadership seems perfectly willing to be so tied up. And so anyway, so I'm trying to, so there's the control. So even on the sort of the grand scale of politics is that tax rates are, this is the emphasis of, and what I'm trying to contrast my discourse here to other progressives who talk on the internet and so forth and so on, is that I am talking also about control. It's not just about taxes, not just about cutting taxes or maybe even getting contracts from government, but it's also about controlling the economy overall, and that corporations are wanting to contain and sideline, and also the right wing, because ideologically there's a whole ideology about how government is an intruder in the economy, which is wrong, which is not even the truth. In other words, the government, even if you have a terrible, like our current economy, it's filled with federal involvement in it, and it's structured by the government, and so the economy is embedded in society, and society is governed by the government, and the government structures the economy, and over a period of time, historical time, has made certain choices in the way it's created laws and so forth and so on that have really, laid the foundation for this economy. And so the economy, it's not as though the government is standing outside the economy and the economy just sort of runs by itself, and the government just is coming in and intruding into the economy. No, it's that it's already embedded. They're all embedded together. We're all embedded together in a social amalgam, okay, and constellation, where it's a matter of how the government involves itself, and who controls government, and who controls the spending, who controls the direction of government, and what ideologies they are prey to or that they believe. And so one ideology is the pretense of government being an intruder on the economy and being external to the economy, and that's a fantasy. That's a fantasy that's shared between even parts of the left, center left, all the way over to the right wing. Okay, and even on the supposed far left, many of the remnants of that idea are still percolate around. And so it's a matter of changing the qualitative relationships and the structural relationships of people's power to the spending and lawmaking capacity of government and regulatory capacity of government, and the corporate elites. Also the right wing, where there's a fundamental agreement that they want to prevent this process where ordinary people have a direct, can direct through government, can help direct the economy, can help direct how it's structured, and also they want to interrupt the visions. For instance, the vision of getting off fossil fuels, the vision they deny climate change, or they have, they're now, or at least minimize climate change and minimize the impacts of climate change, because they don't like what it implies about that we need to use government for human survival, and also that means the public good. That means and to rather than continue on the game of basically just think game of narrowly looking at how can I serve existing corporations, how can I serve existing elites to get them what they want, exactly what they want, and that's it. And so and that's what the lobbying is about, those interests basically saying, I want to be served exactly as I want to be served, and also I want to keep away this people from, or tie up in knots the party that has played around with and toys with the idea of some kind of public good, large scale projects that suggest, that don't actually implement. The Build Back Better agenda is minuscule. It's compared to what we need to do, but it is, and it got more minuscule. Okay, a 10-year, public spending plan to address, all the issues we would need. It's several $1 trillion a year to do that, and it's not the government can do that. The government can spend that money, and it would be the equivalent of the World War II mobilization, or in terms of the percentage of the economy, it was about 40% of the economy at the height of the World War II mobilization. Federal spending was, and I mean, several trillion is still not 40% of the existing economy. So, and we have a society that is in tatters, and that is a polity also that is in tatters. It's so we need that kind of big large scale project, but we don't have the advocates for it. We don't have the. I mean, we have some of the squad. I mean, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is starting out and is closest to someone who we would need, but she's still a junior congresswoman, and she doesn't have many allies in Congress, and but anyway, but we need that kind of visionary change that is based in reality, is based in scientific reality, and is about and should be adjusted and modified according to real events in the world, and that can be measured, and then also that it's about and about supporting human dignity and human solidarity and all the values that that I share and many on the left share, but that anyway, we need that, and that is what this very, very, let's say, mini version of and stunted version of what that would be, that is still too threatening for the corporate oligarchy, who are clever enough and understand enough the threat to them of I mean, they don't have to be that clever. I mean, some of the things are, I mean, for the fossil fuel companies, they say, climate, anything with do with climate, it's toxic for them. So, but other companies, other the finance industry, so forth and so on, they're not interested in being cut out of. They understand, clearly that government could, or many of them, or some of them understand behind the ideological curtain of we have to get markets to markets will solve all problems. They realize that they have a competitor in the federal government, a potential competitor, and that they could potentially be cut out of some of their control and their revenue. So control and revenue, control of the economy, control of their own businesses, but also the control they exert, the influence they exert over the economy overall, by a more public sector, a larger public sector that covers more of the needs of people, but through direct payments from government, and also more, potentially more people working in public projects, and yes, also not potentially, that would also the larger sector, the whatever, the 40% of GDP, or 20 or 30% of GDP, 35% of GDP, federal budget, that would be about changing the physical. We need to change the physical energy flows in our economy, the material flows in our economy, much of which, some of which there might be some profit in it for some companies to exploit and to do that, but the framework, there is work on the framework on creating the foundation that is would never be profitable unless government is involved and spending on it. So anyway, so I just wanted to highlight this bit of news and how it fits in with this vision of how there's a struggle for control over, it's a class struggle, you could say, over the government and what government might potentially do, is not quite doing it now, and Joe Biden is not really wanting, or the Biden administration and the Democratic leadership is not really wanting to do this major effort that I'm describing here. But the opponents to that are going to say, well, no, you can't even do the micro version of it. That's sort of the maybe Potemkin village, you know, to keep the Democratic legitimacy or legitimation process. The video before this, I was talking about legitimation. So it's to legitimate the idea that the Democratic Party are the good guys, and they're sort of for the idea that government can help you. They need to show something, but then so that right now their legitimation crisis has to do with, can they serve these donors, this corporate oligarchs, and also serve the people they're trying to placate, the ordinary people, the base, the Democratic voters like me and you, or I mean, not maybe you may not be one, but anyway. So the typical viewer maybe of Politics 2100. So anyway, so if you are enjoying Politics 2100, please subscribe. If you like this video, or if you have some reactions to these ideas here, please comment, and maybe we can have a dialogue here. And also, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.